Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Jarvis, and with me today, special guest Yosef Colish, who you definitely want Yosef to be calling on your behalf, not calling your office, because Yosef is a recruiter extraordinaire. Amongst other things, recruits financial advisors. He's recruited advisors for us, currently in the market recruiting multiple advisors for our team. And excited to have Yosef on the call today to talk both about how he's able to recruit talent, but also what we as advisors need to be doing to make sure our talent isn't being recruited away. So with that introduction, Yosef, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, let's take just 1 second and tell the audience a little bit about what you do. I know you and I have done work together. We've introduced you to other advisors that you've done work for, but tell us a little bit about the work that you do, and then we're going to spin the table around almost how to defend against the work that you do.
Absolutely. So executive recruiter, doing this 18 years. Our clients are exclusively RIAs, and about 75% of that is advisors and 25% is leadership. So work all over the country, all RIAs of all different shapes and sizes, from several hundred million to several billion, and based out of New York.
Yeah, that's great. The last search that you and I did together, that you did for my firm, it was great. Well, I've shared this story before. One of the things that we had talked about when we were first deciding to work together was said, hey, Matthew, I guess that you're probably like a high quick start. And what's going to happen is you're going to interview 2 or 3 guys and then kind of get bored and just hire the 4th guy. And I said, Yosef, that's exactly my hiring process. And your quick start score is very low. Like you have a super high fact finder score, right?
3, right. 8 on fact finder and 3 on quick start. Yeah.
And so what you articulated to me that really stood out is that you just love to read. Like this is your jam, like interviewing these people, finding them, making sure they're a good fit, screening out people that aren't a good fit. This is like what you were born to do.
Absolutely. I love what I do. Yeah. It's actually 20 something years ago in medical school, and
Really?
it was a medical school dropout. I said, if I ever get bored with anything that I'm doing, I'm just going to stop. But I haven't gotten bored in this job in the last 20 years. So it's a lot of fun.
That's really exciting.
Always a challenge.
So as part of your recruiting, right, you're primarily looking at people that don't necessarily have their job, like they're working somewhere, like they're not just posting their names on a health wanted site. You're calling these people often cold, saying, hey, I've got this opportunity. Are you kind of interested? Right. That's how you're getting in front of candidates that I wouldn't normally see. Like you're not just posting on LinkedIn, hey, I got this guy, Matt, he's got a practice.
Right. Absolutely. And what we've seen even now, there's definitely a war on talent, and people are getting called all the time. So you got to think about, all right, there's about 90% of who we place, they're gainfully employed. So they're working for your competition. And additionally, at our firm, about close to 85%, we never talked to them before. So these are new people in the market. They're up and coming. It's not just people who we happen to know. And it's a phone call, it's an email message, it's a LinkedIn message, it's a text message, it's another phone call. You got to break through the noise with the right message at the right time and the right day. So you can figure if there's 300 potential people you might bring on board in your geography, or some firms are open on the hybrid approach, that times 10. So that's 3,000 reach outs you want to get out to the right people. So it's a process to get in front of people, but you need a good solid story. And really people should be doing it as much as possible, all the time. One of the ABCs of this is always be recruiting. That's what's amazing about what you're doing, Matt, as well. I mean, It was so much fun to recruit for you. So much fun, because you get out there and either people have heard of you.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And what does that do? Right. It's like, wait a minute, I'm going to an RIA. The first thing people think about is culture. Right. And they're nervous. They're very nervous.
Yeah.
Is it cult of personality? Like, who is this person? What's going on? What are they not telling me? And you're out there and on this mission to add massive value to advisors. So they're like, wait a minute, this is the place I want to be. I was literally pushing people away. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, you're not a fit. Right? You're not a fit. And that's rare on the advisor side. Sometimes I'll do an investment search. Everybody wants that search. Everybody wants to sit in the back of the room and be on their computers. They love it. But like as an advisor, so that's one piece that's just absolutely critical. If you're going to be out there poach-proofing your RIA, you think, wait a minute, I don't want anyone to get near me, but I don't want people to touch my people. But if you had a constant flow of your ear to the market, like what could you do? I know I talk to people there, they make it their business lunch once a week with an advisor, somewhere in the neighborhood. They want to meet people. They want to get out there, have a constant
Hmm.
pipeline of potential people that could want to work with.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that piece about culture, especially in smaller firms. So a good friend of mine, Benjamin Brandt, financial advisor, he recently hired a new advisor for his team, and he had pretty good luck with it. But he's so well known through his podcast, and I hadn't really thought about that. That's a real culture thing. I thought, oh well, it's because he's got a celebrity status, but it was probably more like people felt like they knew Ben. It wasn't just this like I'm going to go work for some mysterious guy. Maybe he's cool, maybe it's not.
Exactly. Felt they knew him, and getting beyond culture. Because let's say you talk with someone and they're a nice person, right? You
Sure.
say, okay, this is great. I know. So again, especially when it comes to RIAs, that I would say sub a billion, sub 500 million, like
Yeah.
the smaller you get, the more important this is, that vision building. Like what is your
Interesting.
vision,
Okay.
right? I just spoke to an RIA and about 250 million. And so what is this about for you? Vision, mission, purpose, what drives you? And it was like blank, right?
Sure.
Succession planning, we're a women-owned firm, you know, I'm picking up things that could help build a story, right? But that's not going to resonate. And people all the time call me and say, I'm not sure where the firm is going. I don't really know, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, well,
Yeah.
and therefore I want to leave. Therefore I took your call, right? It's like they're going to take my call if they're not sure where the vision is going. We implemented here EOS last year. I think we were talking
Yeah.
about that. And one of my clients, an owner of a multi-billion-dollar RIA, he said, before you do EOS, read a book called Vivid Visions. Vivid
Okay.
Visions. And I didn't realize that I had read, I guess, a summary of the book, or I knew it, I had done it before. I'm like, this is great. He's like, unless you know where you're going, EOS will help you get there. But where are you going, right? What is the
Sure.
ultimate vision? So again, people, whether it's, and that's again, just to pick on you a little bit, like the
Yeah, please, please.
vision, when people hear about where Jarvis Financial is going, where you're going, what
Yeah.
you're doing for advisors, what you could do for them, it's clear, right? And people, if it resonates, which then they're going to say, this is where I want to be. This is amazing. Whether it's and all the benefits now start kicking in. Oh, it's only 150 million, it's 200 million, it's 400 million. Look where we could be when it gets to billion, 2
Yeah.
billion. But if there's not a vision, and people don't like just a vision of, oh, we're going to be 10 billion in 10 years. A number's
Sure,
not a
sure.
vision. Like why? That is like if you ask them, well, what's it really all about? And you get into that heart and soul of things, that helps to recruit and helps to retain.
And so even if when you're talking to candidates, and I guess I see the same thing when I talk to advisors, even if they've got what we might call objectively a great job, great pay, great benefits, great culture. I have definitely talked to advisors now you mentioned it would say, I don't know where the firm's going, especially again, when you kind of this traditional junior senior role. Like, well, I don't know what the senior guy is going to do. Is he going to just die in his chair? Are we going to ever transition? Is this status quo? Is he going to ride off into the sunset? That's not a super compelling place to be. So that kind of person is now
Yeah.
taking your call. I'm looking for a vision.
They're taking
What do
my
you
call. They
got?
might not have called me proactively, right?
Sure.
But they're taking my call. And everyone's
Yeah.
getting calls. I'm going to give you an unbelievable statistic.
Okay.
It's ridiculous. So 66% of the advisors that we've placed in the last 2 or 3 years, it was all started by some sort of a transition in the firm, some sort of an M&A event, some sort of
Sure.
people looking around. It creates so much concern and question marks about where we're going with this. There are a lot of firms struggle with that because how do you really tell everybody what's going on? Do you not tell? Should you tell? What's happening? What does it mean for you? I don't know what it means for
Yeah.
you. Does it mean? And so some firms get it right. I do have to tell you, like some
Sure.
some
Sure.
of my clients will say, call this firm, we just heard about. And I'm like, wow, that's great. I'll call the firm. And every single advisor be like, I'm good. I'm taken care of. I'm totally
Sure.
good. And call me in a year. I'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And usually that's not the case. But you can get ahead of that. You can get proactively ahead of that and say, here's what's going to be happening. Here's why. But really take the time to unearth hidden concerns. What does their spouse think? What does their significant other think?
Oh, sure.
What's really
Sure.
going
Yeah.
on over here? Like when they go home and talk about it, let's talk about it again. Is everybody comfortable? Because here's what's going on. Again, unless you don't mind losing the person. But if you're trying to poach proof the organization, it's like that becomes a very key time to make sure you're set.
Yeah, and as we talk about this poach proof, right? And you mentioned the talent war. I mean, it's very expensive to find good talent, right? Sometimes you'll hear stories about, oh yeah, I found a guy at the FPA conference, we hired him. Like that does exist at times, but otherwise, yeah. I mean, because to have a team like yours, say, well, we're going to call hundreds of advisors and figure out who's willing to make a move and who's qualified, right? Like you're not just bringing like anybody who's not happy with work. Like they've got to meet both criteria, right? They've got to be interested, and you've got to be interested in them. So it's
Exactly.
not a small feat.
Exactly. So I wanted to share a tip for your listeners that is
please.
a game-changing tip. Okay. And you talk about expense of hiring, right? So what's the dream? The dream is I hire an advisor. I pay him $150K because he's an amazing, awesome 7-year CFP, and he has a $20 million book of business, right?
Yeah, that is the
Unbelievable.
dream. Yeah,
Wow.
perfect.
So what did it cost me? Thanks, Yosef, right? So there's a lot that goes into finding that person. But we used to hear from a lot of our clients, that doesn't exist, right? Needle in a haystack, hard to do, right?
Sure.
Now, last year, we did that 8 times.
Really?
And it was almost 600 million that moved. So you do have to have a lot of things right with your firm to do that. But I want to give a tip on that really can help any firm, even if you say, you know what, this is going to be my hobby for the next couple of Sundays. And okay, so let's say that's what you want. Let's say you wanted someone with a book of business who wanted an advisor. This even helps people that are looking for firms. Some firms are looking for advisors with a book of business and say, well, I want a book of business to come over. If you can create, not all firms can do this, but if you can create a role that is a service advisor role.
Okay.
Right. I need a service advisor. I'm going to peel off some clients, everything you talk about, right? I'm going to peel off some clients. I'm going to come in. They're going to be my right-hand man or woman. They're going to, we're going to help them develop. Maybe have a marketing channel. Things that speak to, I don't need you to port your book. It's not a commission sales role. In fact, sometimes we'll go out there and we'll say, by the 3rd or 4th call, Joe, it's not a commission sales role. There's no portable book of business required. Let's talk. Right? Because everybody's calling them with that story. Move the book. And the people with 15, 20, 30, 40 million, they feel they don't have a book. Oftentimes they feel that way. They're like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm right there yet. I'm getting there, or I don't know if I'm going to be there. I don't know if I want to do this, right? But they probably have 100 million that they're managing, 200, but the portability of it is a small number, right?
Sure.
And so you go out, you connect with those people, and if you can draw a big enough circle. Again, it could be an email marketing campaign. It could be a LinkedIn search. You can, and you're saying, well, I don't know who has 1 million, who has 15 million, 20 million. I don't know who has what, right? I'm going to go out with a service advisor approach. We've found that 30% of the people that you wind up talking to have some sort of portability, some sort of carve out, somebody they can bring over. So 7 out of 10 will be the advisor that might cost 150K, might not, have any portability, but 30% are going to be in there. And then, again, it has to be a cultural fit, has to be a lot of different things have to happen. But that is if you're putting yourself in the mind of the advisors out there, right? That's what they want to hear. It's a little bit differentiating. The ones that can cover themselves, that's the story. Does that make sense?
Sure. Interesting. So to really lead with this is the role you're stepping into. And if, by the way, you have a book to bring over, that's great. But everybody's trying to chase the book, right? Everybody's trying to get you to bring that part over.
Yeah. And I have one client does it so well, they won't talk about the book. They know there's probably something there. But the first interview or two, and they don't call it an interview, they go out for coffee, right? They just have a Zoom call, whatever. They don't talk about the book at all. It's it's a fit situation, right? They can tell the person's an advisor for X amount of years, how much they're running, and then they'll, as opposed to a lot of firms where they're like, so let's talk about the payout. That's what the advisor wants to know first thing. What's the payout? What's your book? That's not the conversation. It's a different person, right? It's not the conversation you're having with these people. But I would say they're hypersensitive to, is this just an asset grab? And because a lot of firms will do that. I just want more assets. I don't really need you. I'm not really going to train you or mentor you or help you grow or give you marketing advice or anything like that. You're going to cover yourself. So I got a seat in a chair. But if you can come out with a different angle, you then attract people. And you'd be surprised how many have a portable subset of their clients.
Sure. It seems like this ties back well to your comments on culture and vision, right? So we're trying to this culture and vision of what you're getting, not just, hey, you have assets. We're just trying to buy the assets, and if you come along, that's great. That's
Right.
great too. So really
Exactly.
to
It
sell that
definitely comes
culture.
across culture, right?
Yeah.
And a culture of what? To attract these types of people in particular, it's a culture of mentorship. It's a culture of an ensemble practice
Mm.
typically. It's a culture of really high level of service in a very deep way of planning. Usually that's what people are looking for. So they see all these things, and they might advise that you're looking to hire is having a bad day. If they go online and Google financial advisor jobs, there's hundreds of them,
Yeah. Countless.
and there's hundreds of them. And
Yeah.
and your advisor that might be looking to leave will see the same thing, but they'll see hundreds of them. But if they have a little bit of a sixth sense, they go, oh, they just want to book a business. I don't want to
Mm.
deal with that. I don't want to go with that. But when your person working for you sees something that says no book of business, not a commission sales role, this is about what you're going to step into.
Okay. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, well, that's different. That's different. And that's what you need. You need that differentiator to be out there. Why are you different? I can't tell you how many people, I just talked to somebody with a very large book of
Hmm.
business, and he said, I don't take these calls, Yosef. I don't do this. I get calls 10 times a day, but I took
Yeah.
your call because it was different. I'm like, well, that's great. What was different, right? But it's a different messaging. So that's what I'm trying to put out there. People might be saying to me, oftentimes I hear back, well, I want someone with a book of business. I can't, I can't afford someone that, right? If there's a way, some way, shape, or form that you could potentially, maybe, like put that out there. You never know what the person is going to come. The right ideal person is going to. We just did a search, and there was only a junior search. They could only afford like 90 to 95 on the base
Sure.
and 20% bonus. And the person they wound up paying cost over 200K
Wow.
because she had a book,
Oh, sure.
right?
Oh,
So we
interesting.
put the word out there. It was not about that. And then out of the 5 people they talked to, 2 of them had books of business, and it was the person that has a good cultural fit also. So sometimes you
Interesting.
can afford a lot more. You can get a lot more, even if you're just putting what you can afford out there. Even just put out the support advisor, there was like a junior advisor, and you'll get more.
It's really interesting. Well, and I liked what you mentioned about the mentorship, the ensemble, the high level of service, right? Really, and I think sometimes it's easy to forget, especially for those of us that built our firms up from nothing or virtually nothing, right? We think, well, like, man, I built this thing, and it is a great honor for me to bring someone in. In fact, this should be an apprenticeship. So they should be paying me to come in. But to your point, there's hundreds of job listings for each one of these guys and gals, and we've really got to have a lot to offer to bring, and then to your point about keeping them from being poached, to get them to stay, right? It can't just be, here's a paycheck, you're graced with my presence type of thing.
Right, exactly. And everybody always will talk about the equity component, right?
Yeah, tell us about that.
In the RIA space, so if somebody is an equity partner,
Yep.
I can't almost I can never recruit them out. Almost never, unless there's that transition thing that happens. I once called an owner of
Interesting.
a $2 billion RIA, cold call,
Yeah.
and he took the call, and I said, can we talk about what's going on? Here's what we do. I don't need you. I don't have any employees. I said, I didn't realize that, but $2 billion RIA? No, employees leave, owners don't leave. Everyone's an owner. That's what he tells me.
Oh, interesting.
And he hung up on me. It's like,
Well,
I
that
don't
kind
want
of
to
guy,
talk
yeah.
to you. Right.
Yeah.
So what I often find is that people are the owners of the RIAs it's like I don't know if I want to deal with that. I don't know how. It's kind of a nebulous black
Oh, yeah,
box. I'm
yeah,
not really
yeah.
sure. It's so complicated. And then the people that are at the firm, they'll deal with it for a certain amount of time, but they're all susceptible. Every
Yeah.
single one of them is susceptible. So they will take the call because of that. If it gets to a certain amount of time, let's just
Interesting.
say someone puts a time frame out there. Oh, don't worry, in 3 to 5 years, we're going to make this happen for you. And
Okay.
now it's 3.5 years and it's crickets.
And nothing's happened. Yeah.
They're going to be, careful of the time frames you put out there, right? But there are organizations like we place at $150 million REA. So they needed a lead advisor, and they had never thought about equity. Why would they think about equity at that point, right? But the advisor had equity. So now you're in trouble. The one they wanted to recruit, just to be more clear, the one they wanted to recruit had equity. So how do you get her to come on board? So you can
Yeah.
call FP transitions. It's not the biggest deal. There's a lot of options out there. They figured something out with a kind of backdoor escape plan as well, just in case.
Sure.
And we're able to say, take what your equity over there, put the equity into here. And it's a business transaction aside from what we're paying you, aside from what we're doing. And so I would say if someone is absolutely not going to ever do any equity at the firm, for us, it's always a challenge. It's always a challenge. For
Interesting.
recruiting out there, if it's not an option, and some firms it's not, right? It's not an option. There's a family business. It is what it is, right? We're owned by something else. It's not going to happen. That becomes a lot of other things need to now take place to compensate for that. And if it is
Interesting.
an option, just like at a high level, that helps a lot. And the firms that have a very clear, here's how it goes. And sometimes firms will put in the offer. Here's how it goes. When you hit this in self-source revenue, we will talk. Obviously, we're not guaranteeing it. We will talk about it.
Sure.
There's we have to see if we like each other, et cetera. But that supercharges recruiting efforts,
Interesting.
supercharges retention efforts. Everyone feels like an owner. Everyone feels like it's my firm. And then when the recruiter calls and says, well, here's the situation, they'll say back to the recruiter, what's the equity plan?
Mm.
Oh, well, there's not an equity plan. It's not that clear. Well, then I'm not interested. Or it's
Yeah.
not a possibility. I'm not interested. Or I have equity. Are they going to replace it? If you haven't, it becomes a
Interesting.
force field in a strong way. Unless someone's really upset, there's a transition, there's a sale, they are going to say, not interested. So I know it's hard to get over. I know it's hard to explore. It's easy to put off, right?
Yeah,
It's
it
like,
is. Yeah.
it's important, but it's not urgent,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's in that quadrant. But I would recommend to everyone, if you have a firm, if you're building, you're in scale, you want to keep your people for a long time, to set aside some time and on a weekly basis over the next year or so, learn about it, get the options clear, and even share that you're doing that with your team. This is
Yeah.
important. Look what's happening, because you get all the brownie points just for sharing you're doing that with your team.
Yeah, that's a really interesting comment there, Yosef, because I guess, on the one hand, like you said, creating these equity agreements is a lot of work, right? It's legal work, it's a mental work, it's getting over the emotional head trash of, wait, no, I own this thing. But it sounds like, to your point, you got to weigh that against now I'm in the very front of the line for recruiting when I'm trying to bring talent in. And I have, use your terminology, I have the biggest force field possible when it comes to hiring people. So it's not like, hey, equity is this headache. It needs to be balanced on the scale of, yes, doing this equity thing is a headache, but now I just cut to the front of the line on everything else, on all my talent.
You cut to the front of the line. I have a firm that, they are they're trying to get through, like, the owners, right, backing up and making less and less. So he's 88% owner, then 66% owner, still over the 51%. And their reputation in the field is like, we don't know if he's ever going to let go, right?
Yeah,
But that's still
standard,
enough,
yeah.
because they really are focused on equity. They always talk about equity. It's still enough. I have another firm, and so they got to several billion. Another firm way eclipsed them in the speed of their growth. The owner is 22% owner. I'm proud of
Wow.
that. I'm proud of that. He's got a $10 million firm today, which 5 years ago was 500 million. 500 million to 10 billion. So I said, you're doing something right. So we had like an hour-long call today. It's like, what's going
So
on? How are you
his
doing that?
percentage is down, but his total value is through the roof.
Right. So attracting quality people care. They care about percentages. But the difference between offering equity and not offering equity, or having some sort of plan and really being comfortable around that, is a huge game changer. Now we're getting to nuances of percentages, right? Now, but even just to be able to talk about it, I can't tell you how many RIAs, they won't, they can't, they don't know. How many people call me all the time? It's in the top 3 all the time. What's really super important to you? What do you care about? People are always mentioning money, obviously.
Sure, of course.
Right? Got to pay well, pay in range, and equity. The long term, they see the value of what someone else has built. No one is expecting 20%.
Sure.
People are thinking 0.5%, 1%, 2%,
Okay,
3%.
so even just anything.
Yeah, anything.
Okay.
It's such a superpower of retention, and a superpower of, and you want the people that want that, right? So a lot of people will pay a percentage of top line revenue.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. Doesn't come close to having equity. doesn't come close. Even the numbers exactly the same.
Huh. Yeah. So equity trumps
people
the
want
bonus
to be
structure all day long.
owners. It's emotional for them too.
Yeah.
It's emotional.
Yeah,
I'm part of this. Yeah.
As emotional as we are about letting go of any, it's just as emotional for them for getting. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. Well, Yosef, we could go on for hours on this, but you had something for our listeners, who want to have a chat with you about how do they keep that talent, right? Whether it's this equity piece or the vision or the culture, you're willing to talk to listeners of our podcast who are looking to what you call poach proof their talent. Tell us a little bit about that, if you will.
Absolutely. So just in following your footsteps of offering massive value, right? Alleviating some pain points.
Love it.
And right, promoting some action over here. So we are going to offer all the listeners a half-hour complimentary strategy session with me. Doing this 18 years. Again, we're part of I didn't mention before, but we are part of a national network of recruiters. It's called Sanford Rose. It's actually the 20th largest search firm in the country on the Forbes 200 list.
Wow.
There's 175 offices. There's 212 owners. So they rank all the owners, the producing owners at least. So 2 years ago, I was ranked number 1. Last year, ranked number 2, the producing owners. And we're ranked 18. We're trying to get into the top 10 now of overall firms. So I say that because we focus exclusively in the RIA space. I've poached from many broken RIAs, right? And recruited to many firms that got it right. So it is possible. It is possible. It's not this complimentary call is not a sales call, right? That's not what it is. This is a session. It's packed with customized value. That's what it is. And so it's not also for everyone, because I know a lot of people are coming and saying, oh, yeah, lifestyle practice. This is what I want to do. I'm not really hiring advisors. I'm not really hiring a director of ops. Totally fine. But if it's about creating a scalable business, then it really comes down in a big way to caring for your teammates, finding new teammates. And so you can actually text Jarvis.
Yep.
Text Jarvis to 646-347-6382. I'll say it again, 646-347-6382. So you text Jarvis and we will give you a link where you can sign up, and I very much look forward to spending some time together.
Well, yeah, so that's an incredibly generous offer. Really appreciate it. I hope that doesn't turn into the golden hug, as there's this expression like when the whole world starts calling. But I just want to echo a couple of things. One, I've had many strategy calls, Yosef, with you as we've done recruiting together and so forth. Incredibly valuable time. You've got a pulse on the industry like nobody else does. But I do want to echo what you said. This is for people that have an established practice who are really trying to take this to an enterprise level. Please do not call Yosef because you're at $12 of production and you want to go to 13, or you want to talk about some imaginary employee you want to protect from poaching. If you have advisors in place and you want to make sure that they stay and you're bringing talent on, this is an incredibly valuable call. So Yosef, I really appreciate you making that available to our advisors. Any other parting words of wisdom? Again, I feel like we could go for hours on this, and I've loved what you've talked about. Like, it's already rocked my world. I have a whole page of notes here of things I've got to start working on. Any other parting words of wisdoms for our listeners?
I'll just put something out there that we started. Please. It's called Heart of Private Client Influence. And you can find out more information on our website as well, leahyosef.com. But basically, I've found that the RIAs that we're working with and we're prospecting with, they want to meet other people. They want to meet CPAs, want to meet attorneys, want to meet M&A advisors, people who are selling their businesses. And so we are now doing on a monthly basis, we're getting a virtual event. It's kind of like virtual networking, where we're introducing everybody to each other. It's only about 5 or 10 people for an hour. And talking a little about the influence, private client influence. Actually partnered with a firm called Unblinded, the owner's blind, and he's with us there as well. Wow. It's a really powerful session. And so if anyone's interested, if that sounds like something that would be meaningful, you can check out our website. You can reach out to us about that. We're kind of booked for the next few months, but it's a unique way of kind of giving back. You're giving back in an incredible way to the industry. This is kind of giving back and saying, you want to grow your COIs? Here is a virtual, we work hard to put it together, all different types of people. And it's really interesting. So I'd love to talk to anybody who might be interested in that as well.
That's really cool. Well, Yosef, thank you so much for your time today. Some really great insight stuff I had never thought about. And so I always love when I come to an episode and think, oh man, I didn't know about that. So I'm really excited for that. For all our listeners, remember to take action, especially this vision piece, right, Yosef, that you mentioned, the culture, the vision, whether it's just you and you're trying to bring on your first person or your 10th person, or you're just trying to keep your relationship manager there, that vision is going to make all the difference. So implement that. Yosef, thank you again. And for all our listeners, until next time, happy planning.